Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that's, well, it's the invisible backbone of pretty much any big undertaking. Time.
Hmm.
Not in, a cosmic sense, but how it's actually structured and managed to get things done.
Yeah, like the framework.
Think of it as the rhythm section in a band. You might not always focus on it, but if it's off, everything else falls apart.
That's a great analogy. And we've got a fascinating blueprint here for how time is organized in this context. It's quite remarkable how many different angles are covered,
Right.
from like rock-solid dates to more flexible periods for fixing any hiccups along the way.
Okay.
Getting a handle on these time-related bits really gives you a sharp perspective on how projects are meant to run, and crucially, where potential snags might hit.
Okay, so let's lay the groundwork then. It seems like the very first thing is to sort of nail down some key moments in time.
Absolutely. The anchors.
We're talking about when things officially get rolling. That's the starting date. Then when access is granted, to get boots on the ground in different areas.
Yeah.
Those access dates.
Yep.
Then, of course, the crucial milestones, the key dates.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
And the ultimate finish line, the completion date.
Exactly. These dates act like anchors. Like I said, everything else is tied to them.
Yeah.
And it's worth pointing out that these fundamental dates are usually locked down right at the beginning,
Whereabouts? Is that specified somewhere obvious?
usually in what's called the contract data. That's where you typically find them defined. It serves as the agreed-upon framework for the entire project. Think of it as setting the initial coordinates on a map.
Okay. And the completion date itself. It isn't always just a date on a calendar, is it? I heard it can be a bit more dynamic.
That's right. While it can be a specific calendar date, like December 1st or something,
Yeah.
it can also be defined as, say, a certain number of weeks or days kicking off from the starting date.
Oh.
This allows for a little wiggle room at the very beginning, especially if pinning down that exact start day is tricky up front.
Right, makes sense. It's like saying the journey will take, 30 days, even if the departure time shifts by an hour.
Precisely. And you might also hear about a planned completion date, which is what the contractor aims for internally, perhaps. That might be earlier than the official contractual completion date.
Gotcha. Now, beyond these fixed points, there's this living document, the program, that maps out the entire timeline in detail.
Yes, the program. Crucial.
That sounds like it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing, though.
Not at all, no. Imagine the program as maybe the movie storyboard for the project.
Okay, I like that.
It lays out all the key scenes, the different work packages in the order they need to happen, and how long each one is expected to take.
Right.
The initial version is put forward by the contractor for acceptance, for approval, and it needs to show not just their own work, but also how it connects with anything the client or, others are doing.
Ah, so dependencies are key.
Absolutely. Highlighting what needs to happen before something else can begin, prerequisites.
So it's a detailed sequence of events showing who's doing what and when. And like any good plan, you said it needs to adapt to reality.
Precisely. Programs aren't meant to gather dust on a shelf.
Yeah.
They are regularly revisited and updated. The frequency, how often, is often spelled out right from the start in the contract data.
Okay.
Plus, if there are significant shifts in the project, maybe things are moving faster or, more likely, slower than planned.
Yeah.
Or there's a need to change the approach to future work, then the program needs to be revised to reflect that new reality.
And it covers everything, even problems.
Interestingly, yes. It even needs to show how any defects that pop up will be tackled and corrected within the timeline.
Huh. And it's not just the contractor who can say, let's update this.
No, the project manager, the person overseeing things for the client, they can also instruct the contractor to submit a revised program, particularly if there are concerns about hitting that all-important completion date.
Okay, this is where it starts to get really interesting for me. We see how external factors, things outside the direct control of the project team, can actually have a formal impact on the timeline.
Yes,
These are called compensation events.
that's the term, yes. Compensation events are like acknowledging that sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts, things happen that have legitimate time-related knock-on effects.
Right, so it's not about blame necessarily, but about recognizing an impact.
Exactly. And we've got a few key examples here in the source material.
Yeah.
One is if the client doesn't deliver something they promised.
Like materials or accent?
Be either, yeah. Or information.
Right.
If they don't provide it by a date that was clearly laid out in the accepted program, the one everyone agreed to.
That seems like a no-brainer, right? If you can't get what you need, you can't do your work on time.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
What else can trigger one?
What else? Let's see.
Another big one is if the project manager instructs a halt to work,
Ah, okay. Tells them to stop.
or says not to start something yet, or even if they change one of those crucial key dates we talked about earlier.
Right. Direct instructions changing the plan.
These are direct interventions that can clearly throw the schedule off. Weather can also play a part.
Whoa, really? Just bad weather.
Well, it has to be pretty extreme.
Yeah.
We're not talking about just your average rainy day ruining a barbecue.
Aha.
It's about delays caused by exceptionally severe weather conditions that are statistically rare. Maybe occur less frequently than once in 10 years.
Wow, okay. Specific.
And it has to be recorded properly within a specific time frame and location, and crucially, before the project's completion date.
So it's about events that are genuinely unusual and have a clear, demonstrable impact on the timeline.
Exactly. That's the key. Other examples include delays caused by necessary inspections or tests, if the supervisor doesn't carry them out promptly.
Ah, bottlenecks.
Sort of, yeah. Or even if an upfront payment, an advance payment that was agreed upon in the contract, doesn't come through on schedule.
Money talks or delays things.
Indeed. The core idea is that if these specific defined events occur and they mess with the project's timeline, there's a formal process. It can potentially lead to adjustments in the completion date or other time-sensitive aspects.
Now, to try and nip these time-related problems in the bud, there's this idea of early warning. It sounds like a proactive heads-up system.
It is. And it's really important. Think of early warning as raising a flag when there's a potential storm brewing on the horizon.
Metaphorically speaking.
Hey, yes, metaphorically. Something that could delay reaching the completion date or hitting a key date.
And who raises this flag?
Both the project manager and the contractor have a responsibility to sound the alarm as soon as they see a potential issue. It's a mutual obligation.
So it's not just about pointing fingers later.
Not at all. This isn't just about ticking a box. A truly effective early warning system can be the difference between a minor adjustment and a major delay. It can save significant cost and frustration down the line.
So someone spots a potential problem, raises the alarm. What happens next? Is there a meeting?
Typically, yes.
Yes.
An early warning meeting is called. The aim of these get-togethers is for everyone involved to discuss the potential problem, figure out how bad the impact might be.
Assess the risk.
Exactly. Assess the risk and brainstorm ways to lessen or avoid the negative consequences, especially when it comes to time.
So collaborative problem solving.
That's the ideal, yes. It's a chance to get ahead of potential delays before they really take hold. The documents we're looking at even lay out specific time frames for these initial and follow-up early warning meetings after the project kicks off.
Okay, structure around it. Let's switch gears slightly. What happens when the main work is done, but there are still some issues, defects? How does time play into getting those sorted?
Right, defects.
Yeah.
That leads us to the idea of a defects date and the issuing of a defect certificate.
Okay.
The defects date is a specific point in time, usually set relative to completion.
Right.
If any defects have been officially notified before this date.
By the supervisor, usually.
Yes, typically.
Yeah.
Then the defect certificate isn't issued right away when that date passes.
Ah, so when is it issued?
It happens at the later of 2 points. Either when the agreed upon period for fixing those defects ends the defect correction period,
Okay.
or when all the notified defects have actually been corrected to the required standard, whichever happens last.
Got it. And getting access to fix these defects, that can also affect the timeline for fixing them,
Right. Absolutely. That's an important point. If the contractor needs to get back into an area that the client has already taken over, perhaps started using,
Yeah.
to fix the defect, the clock for fixing that specific defect, that correction period, might not even start ticking until that necessary access is officially granted and available.
Makes sense. Can't fix what you can't get to. Now, for something that sounds like it could be a real motivator, or maybe a real penalty.
The carrot and the stick.
Exactly. Getting a bonus for finishing early and having to pay damages for finishing late, is that common?
It's provided for, often as specific options you choose to include, like options X6 and X7 are often mentioned. If it's agreed upon upfront in the contract data,
Yeah.
the contractor might get a bonus for wrapping things up ahead of the agreed completion date. That's option X6, usually.
Nice incentive.
On the flip side, there's the potential for delay damages if that completion date isn't met. That's often option X7. These are pre-agreed amounts, usually per day or week of delay.
So clear financial consequences tied directly to the timeline.
Definitely. Standard approaches often used to incentivize early completion or, well, penalize delays.
It's interesting to think about how all of this plays out when subcontractors are brought into the mix. Does managing time look different at that level?
Well, the fundamental principles of managing time programs, dates, dealing with delays, they remain the same. But yes, the specific time frames in subcontracts are often intentionally adjusted.
How so? Shorter? Longer?
Usually, they're set relative to the main contract to allow for the necessary back and forth of information. The main contractor needs time to receive info from the subby, process it, maybe discuss it with the project manager, and then feed instructions back down.
Ah, like a buffer time built in.
Sort of, yeah, to account for that communication chain. Subcontractors also typically have their own programs, and how often those are updated is often linked to the update schedule of the main project's program, just to keep everything aligned.
Makes sense. Alignment is key. Finally, even when things unfortunately head towards disagreements or disputes, time seems to be a critical factor there too.
Absolutely. There are usually quite strict deadlines for formally notifying a dispute.
You can't just wait forever.
No. And then for taking it to the next step, which is often a process called adjudication, there are defined periods for referral.
And you have to stick to those.
Generally, yes, it's important to stick to these time limits. Although it's worth noting that these deadlines can sometimes be extended, but only if everyone involved agrees to it in writing.
Okay. So time limits apply even in resolving conflict. So as we've explored, time isn't just something that passes while a project happens, is it? It's an active element that's structured and managed through, well, all these mechanisms.
Definitely. Through clearly defined dates, through these living programs that evolve.
Yeah, the dynamic aspect.
Proactive early warnings, hopefully, and these established processes for dealing with events that can knock the schedule off course, like the compensation events.
Right.
Really understanding these time-related aspects isn't just about hitting deadlines, though that's obviously important. It's crucial for effective planning right from the start.
Before you even begin.
Exactly. For spotting and dealing with potential problems before they become major headaches, that's the risk management side, and ultimately for achieving a more predictable and successful outcome.
Yeah, predictability is huge. This deep dive into how time is structured in this kind of framework really highlights how absolutely central it is. It makes you think, doesn't it? How much more effectively could projects be run if there was an even greater focus on this time element, maybe as carefully laid out here? Perhaps it would encourage even more rigorous initial planning, more vigilant, ongoing monitoring of progress against the program.
More discipline around updating it, too.
Right. And maybe a stronger emphasis on that early communication whenever potential time-related risks pop up, instead of waiting.
It certainly feels like focusing clearly on these time mechanics could proactively mitigate a lot of common issues.
Definitely something to consider, the interplay between planning, flexibility, and the inevitable passage of time. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.